We started our conversation on excitotoxins a little bit last week. So I think what surprised me, because I've shared this presentation before, and typically I begin the class asking the three questions that I asked all of you, is how many have heard of glyphosate, which is the active ingredient to Roundup? And I think the majority of you raised your hands. And then I asked the question, how many people have heard of or understand something about GMOs? And most of you raised your hands, and I was surprised when I asked how many have heard of excitotoxins. There was more than what I normally find had heard of excitotoxins. I don't know how much you understand of excitotoxins, but hopefully after tonight's presentation it will enlighten you as to what are excitotoxins, how they affect the body, and so forth. But you know, Dan and I don't know all of you, but we profess to be Christians, and so everything that we do, like we said at the beginning, we want to make sure it's based on biblical principles. And so why would excitotoxins be an issue to us? Because, well, let me read it to you. In Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 through 9, it says, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." This is something that we need to understand, because the reality of Satan upon this earth is real. And we have told also in the book of Revelation that a third of the angels of heaven were swept to this earth as well. And so we have an enemy who hates everybody who wants to keep Christian principles. Yeah. This we have to be aware of. So it helps us to understand why all of these things are in this earth that are harmful to us, because we have an enemy. Now in verse 12 of that same chapter it says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them." They were rejoicing because Satan was cast out of heaven. So yes, they were rejoicing. But it goes on to say, "But woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having" what? Great wrath. He's angry. He hates you. That's the bottom line. We need to be aware of that. It says, "Because he knoweth he hath but a short time." And so we know we have an enemy. We know we're going to face obstacles, and excitotoxins is one of these obstacles. And so what is another reason that we do the things that we do? 1 Corinthians chapter 6, 19 and 20 says, "What? Know ye not that your body is a temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." We do that which is right because we were bought at a price. Jesus Christ shed his blood. He gave his life for you and I, that we could be saved from sin and the conditions that we face upon this earth. Yes, we're going to face them. But the ultimate is to know that we have hope because of what Jesus has done for us. And so we want to glorify God in all that we do. That's our purpose upon earth, glorify God. So John, the third book of John, chapter 1, verse 2 says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." That's why we do what we do too. We want to glorify God, but John understood, God understood, and Satan understands as well, that if we are physically not fit, we are weak. You know, you think of times when you've been sick. Have you had much ambition? Oh, give me the Bible, let me read it and go share it with somebody. No, you just want to lay down. You're tired. You're exhausted. Satan understands that, and there's only one avenue that God can reach mankind for his salvation. Satan knows that too, and that's through the mind. So he knows if he can destroy the mind or alter it in any way, he knows it is more difficult for us to discern sacred things from worldly things, and that therefore we can be deceived. So let's go forward from that. I need to set that. That is our principle, okay? Now, everything I'm going to share with you tonight was taken from Dr. Russell Blaylock. Who is Dr. Russell Blaylock? Well, he is a retired neurosurgeon, and he has done much study on excitotoxins. Now, I say everything I'm going to share with you, almost everything I'm going to share with you comes from him. It's hard to get away from him when you study excitotoxins or neurotoxins because he's done so much work on it. And so I have watched presentations that he has done, so I've gleaned some information from there. I've read many different articles online, and almost everybody that I've read that talks about excitotoxins always refers back to Dr. Russell Blaylock. So if you want to know more, and there's much more to it than what I'm going to share with you, but I'm going to give you the bulk of it tonight. And he wrote a book, it's called Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. So if you want to understand excitotoxins in more in depth than what I'm going to share with you tonight, that is a great source. Read that book, Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. So what are excitotoxins? Well, an excitotoxin, the definition of it, you can just think of the word itself, excite, toxin, kill. Pretty simple, but the definition they give, it says substance which causes a pathological process by which brain cells are damaged and killed by excessive stimulation. So knowing this, is this something that you would want to put into your body? My brain cells are precious. I've lost many of them through my lifetime, through the life I used to live. And so I want to have as many as I can. And again, this is the avenue that Satan can enter in. And this is the avenue where God can reach us, is through the mind. So we want to preserve the mind. So where did these excitotoxins, excuse me, come from? Well, in 1908, there was a Japanese scientist, and he wanted to know what made this seaweed that he ate taste so good. And so he did some research and he extracted the MSG from the seaweed. And this taste, he called it umami, because it means tasty or delicious. And so this became one of the tastes of the mouth, and it was added to the other four tastes, the sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. So it originated from a Japanese scientist. He liked this taste. There was something in this seaweed. He wanted to know what it was. And this was MSG. How many of you heard of MSG? Most of you, that's good. So how did it get to the United States of America? Well, in World War II, as the army soldiers of the U.S. were invading or capturing the German soldiers in different places, they would gather their rations together and they ate them. And they thought, you know what, something is really strange. Their food tastes much better than ours. Why is that? And so we want to look at MSG, and that will help us to understand why that was. So what is MSG? Well, MSG is an abbreviation for monosodium glutamate. And so monosodium means, mono means one. So you have one sodium atom and it's combined with glutamate. Now glutamate is an amino acid. Now amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So these things are found normally in our body. It says that MSG has been added to many food and drink products since 1945 as a taste enhancer. And that's something that we need to understand. MSG serves no other purpose, has no nutritional value, it adds nothing other than it makes the food taste better. That's it. And so it is also derived from fermented starch or sugar. So if monosodium glutamate, if glutamate is one of the substances involved in MSG, we need to look at what is glutamate. So glutamate is a neurotransmitter. Now, do we understand what a neurotransmitter is? A neurotransmitter sends signals from one cell to the next. So if you have something going on in the body, for example, if I touch something hot, it's going to say to your brain, get your hand off of that because it's very hot. And it'll send signals very quickly. So a neurotransmitter sends signals between cells, okay? Now, this glutamate is a neurotransmitter that's used in the central nervous system. Now, the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay? And as we said, that it's used in sending signals to other parts of the body from the brain to control homeostasis. Do we understand what homeostasis is? It's important to understand that too. Homeostasis is the body trying to maintain a stable or consistent environment within itself. And so if the body can't maintain that stable environment, what happens? That's when we get disease, because the body is out of balance. It can't maintain where it wants to be, because the body knows where it needs to be. But when there's interference within the neurotransmitters, it can't function properly, so things are going haywire. It's kind of like a short circuit in an electrical system. Okay? Let's look at a little more about glutamate. Glutamate is found in very small quantities in the body, and it is found naturally in some whole foods. And the body knows how to process glutamate when it is bound up with other amino acids. In other words, when it's found naturally in the foods that we eat, the body says, I know how to deal with this. But manufacturers take it away and they extract the glutamate and they put it in such large quantities into our food. Remember, it's a neurotransmitter. And so when that is just shoved into our bodies, it gets to the cells. You can imagine now the cells are overloaded with this neurotransmitter. And so when it's flooded into the body, it's going to take those neurons and stimulate them. And it will destroy them. They will die. And so it is also a non-essential amino acid. In other words, we don't need it in our diet. Our body uses very little of it. And the little that it uses, it produces on its own. So we don't need to take it in the body. So why are we adding it to our foods? We're going to see. So it's these massive quantities that are the problem. Well, in 1948, the U.S. Army invited the major food companies to introduce to them to their discovery. But the food companies, they were very excited. Now, I don't know, some of you have lived in that time. A lot of foods were packaged in tin cans. And you had that flavor, that taste in the foods. It was evident, it was there. And so they thought, well, if this could take away the flavor of this tin, it will help us to sell more food. And so they thought, yeah, good thing, we're all in. But unfortunately, there was no testing that was done to see if it was safe or not. And so they started adding it to baby food. And if you want to get Mama Bear mad, you mess with her baby. But in 1957, there were two scientists, Lucas and Newhouse. They started doing research on MSG, just like scientists do, just like you were talking about, Jeff, with the plants. People experimented. Mothers saw that it would have this effect on their children and say, that will work for this. Well, scientists are that way. They like to research and look at what is MSG? What does it really do? Well, these two scientists, they did research to see if it could heal diseased retina cells. But what they found that it destroyed them and caused brain lesions on the mice that were being tested. Well, they documented what they found, and it went into a journal. It was a smaller one, I guess. And so it was just kind of put to the side and really was lost and forgotten. But in 1968, there was a neuropathologist and a neuroscientist. He conducted his own study using MSG. And finding indeed it did destroy retina cells and cause brain lesions that looked the same as those caused from strokes and Alzheimer's. Findings were brought before the food industry and finally before a congressional hearing. These scientists, they were finding that this was causing serious health problems. But the food industry is a big, big industry. And I'm just being straightforward. You folks understand that money talks. And if something's going to stimulate people to buy more of my food and it's going to taste better, you can pass a few dollars. And these food companies wanted nothing to do with it because they knew what MSG did for their food and for the sales of their food. And so these scientists didn't stop. There were other tests and they were finding indeed there were issues. And so they took it before Congress. And Congress said, you know what, okay, we need to do something. And so I'll share with you more later on what they decided to do. But those who put it into baby food, they said, we'll remove it. Well, it took them 10 years to remove MSG from the baby food. And what they did is they disguised it under other names. And so we think, well, Why would people do that? Money, again, talks. That's just the bottom line of it, because why would you do these things? Because I'm telling you now, this was just 2 scientists, but to date, there are thousands of studies that have been done on MSG, and all of them are negative. They cause serious health defects. But yet they're still putting in our foods in greater quantities, and we're going to look more at that. What's going on with the food industry? Now, Dr. Russell Blaylock, he was warned by people, don't go into this. This is a big company, this food industry, and they will squash you. And I'm not going to share those details. He doesn't like to, but indeed, he faced a lot of opposition, serious opposition, because you don't want to mess with an industry that big. That's money. Money talks. Okay, so this was the argument brought forth by the food companies. They said the blood-brain barrier is protected. MSG cannot cross it. So MSG cannot be the issue with the findings that you're seeing with the brain lesions and so forth. It can't be that. They also said because glutamate was found naturally in the body, remember it's a neurotransmitter in the central nervous system, they said that it can't be harmful. These are the foundation of their 2 arguments. And yet all of this research was showing that in massive quantities, beyond what the body can handle, it is indeed causing these health issues. The blood-brain barrier. It says studies were conclusive that indeed it could cross it if someone has had, and then they list them. It's stroke, if you've had a stroke, a head injury, seizures, MS, infections, brain surgery, certain drugs, heat stroke, irradiation, diabetes, high fever, hypertension, and the list went on and on. I just named, well, how many are here. But if you've had these things, your blood-brain barrier is compromised, and MSG can pass through the blood-brain barrier. So there are some parts of the brain that are not protected by the blood-brain barrier. So these things are exposed without any protection. And so we want to look at those. 3 of them I'm listing here is the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the pineal gland. Now the concentration levels of added free glutamate, MFG is manufactured free glutamate, is toxic to the body, as we've already mentioned. And so I want you to pay attention, because how many people have gone to the doctor when they've had health issues? Has the doctor ever said, or have you ever asked the doctor, could it be MSG causing these problems? Let's look. The hypothalamus. What does the hypothalamus do? It controls and regulates the endocrine glands. Now these are the endocrine glands. The thyroid, which the thyroid is responsible for metabolism, heart rate, mood, and body temperature. So if you have issues with any of these symptoms, there could be something with your thyroid. It could be something involved with MSG. And when I tell you what foods contain this and the amounts that are in it, you might start thinking a little differently. This maybe could be an issue. Parathyroids, they regulate the calcium and phosphorus in the body and the blood system. The adrenals regulate metabolism, the immune system, blood pressure, and stress. I mean, we all got stress, especially nowadays. Testes, the ovaries, which are for reproduction, and the pancreas, which secretes insulin and glucagon, also aids with digestion. So if the hypothalamus is compromised, you may see effects in any one or more than one of these symptoms in your body. The hypothalamus controls sleep and wake cycles. Do you have problems sleeping? Could be an issue. Control of hunger and satiety. Again, they add this to their product because they want you to eat more of it. You remember the Lay's potato chip commercial? Bet you can't eat just one? They knew you couldn't, because they knew the effect it would have upon the body. It affects the hormone output where you can't control your satiety. You just want to keep eating more and more. The hypothalamus is also involved with the autonomic nervous system, the heartbeat, and peristalsis. Now, I know for myself, I didn't really understand these things years ago, but I lived a not a very good lifestyle. And when I took some of these things out of my diet, because I used to have an irregular heartbeat, I noticed that it almost went completely away. It was something that was very consistent. And I never put 2 and 2 together until I started studying this. I thought, wow, could that be? I was eating MSG, I didn't know it. And many of you probably are too and don't know it. The limbic system, which involves the emotion, love, fear, anger, compassion, and empathy, and it's a regulation of the immunity. MSG suppresses the immune system. That's part of, I believe, why we see all of the issues today. If the immune system is suppressed, you're going to take on disease. Pituitary and pineal gland. The pituitary, it takes its orders from the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus takes its orders from the body. It sends signals to it, and then it sends out the signals to wherever it needs to. And pituitary gland is one of them. And it regulates metabolism, growth, blood pressure, and reproduction. And the pineal releases melatonin. So let's look at something a little bit different, the placental blood barrier. Now, pregnant mice were fed MSG, and their offspring were compared with the offspring of mice not fed MSG. They were found intellectually impaired, having severe reductions of norepinephrine, which helps the brain to focus and concentrate and pay attention. Do we see an alarming rate of these things? ADHD, ADD, autism, Asperger's. You're seeing this on a rise. And it's so interesting because when they started using this stuff, it was becoming more and more. You started seeing these mental disorders more and more. There's a connection. Also, with the placental blood barrier, it says, it was also found that there was an 80% reduction in the frontal lobe of acetylcholine, which is vital in the process of learning, memory, and complex problem solving. In other words, this is the place where we make our moral decisions. So, do we understand what acetylcholine is? Acetylcholine is another neurotransmitter. So if there's an 80% reduction in this frontal lobe where we make our decisions, our moral decisions, whatever decisions we make, can you see that that would be a real issue? Remember, that's the only avenue that God can reach us. Satan knows that. If we lose 80% of that neurotransmitter to make those proper decisions, we're not going to make good decisions most of the time. So what can we do to increase acetylcholine? Well, eat plants and foods that are high in choline. Now, I've listed soybeans and kidney beans, but you can take any bean and you're going to find choline in it. But shiitake mushrooms, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and I like the herbs. If you study the herbs, they're so powerful. But paprika, garlic, one of my favorites, turmeric. My wife just made an anti-inflammatory drink this evening that she takes for her inflammation. Thyme, onion, cayenne, ginger, parsley, basil, oregano. Now there are more things that contain the choline. You can do your research as well, but these are a list of some. Interuterine. The sensitivity interuterine up to the age of 4 to excitotoxins is 4 times greater than in an adult. So if we think we have it bad, think of what happens there. It's 4 times greater. Again, the damage caused at those ages is permanent. The brain disorders have skyrocketed in the last 30, 40 years. It correlates with the influx of this MSG in our foods. ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's. So all of this, brothers and sisters, is so our food tastes good. Is our taste buds worth risking all of this to our children, to ourselves, and especially for us, knowing that we were bought at a price? Can I honor God properly and to my fullest if I'm missing 80% of the neurotransmitter in my mind that makes those decisions? No, we can't. In the excitatory destruction process of the cell, there are high levels of free radicals released. Free radicals go out searching for other electrons, causing damage to other cells, playing a role in the development of cancer and other diseases. So this isn't limited to just damage to the brain. When this process takes place, free radicals, do we understand what free radicals are? Okay. They go about... Sure. They go about because they're missing an electron in their outer shell, and they want to be balanced. They don't want to be out of balance. And so they go around grabbing electrons from healthy cells, causing these other cells to be damaged. That's where cancer comes from. They damage other cells. But there's things that we can do too. We can eat things that are high in antioxidants. So I'll get into that a little bit later. So if we see on the label that says no MSG, is it safe? Is it safe? MSG was receiving such bad press that food companies had to do something. The FDA told them that they did not have to label MSG if it was not 99% pure. So food companies labeled it under other names at lower concentration levels to avoid the MSG label. And we're going to go over some of these names that you may or may not be familiar with. But we will see what names they have used. And this list, it keeps getting added because people find out what it is, so they bring in a different name. So another thing you need to understand about MSG is that it works synergistically. So it might not be 99% pure, but if you've got 5 or 6 ingredients that contain MSG, it's going to add together. You're going to have a very powerful reaction. So no MSG does not mean that it is safe. They label it under names, other names, and we'll look at that. So if your ingredients or your label says no added MSG, is it safe? You're right, Delilah. It's not. No added MSG is deceptive as well because it is simply added under a disguised name, as I said before, and most foods contain it anyway. They don't need to add it because the manufacturer already put it in. Now, I just mentioned excitotoxins. I didn't know I had that in here. It works synergistically. So, and many foods contain multiple excitotoxins. So read labels, and we're going to look at some of the names. So we need to be label readers. So is sugar-free safe? We need to touch on this as well. How many have heard of aspartame? Most people? Anything labeled sugar-free, diet, low-fat, low-sugar will contain MSG. It will. So we think we're being very healthy by eating these foods? In 1981, a former FDA toxicologist, Dr. Adrian Gross, said it is clear beyond any shadow of a doubt that aspartame caused cancer in laboratory animals. He said beyond a shadow of doubt. He worked for the FDA. He was a toxicologist. He even confessed it himself. And because there was just getting so much research, it was just overwhelming. And so, who is the maker of aspartame? Monsanto. Have you heard of Monsanto?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Monsanto has a patent for glyphosate as well. We talked about glyphosate, which is the main active ingredient in Roundup. Monsanto. Now Monsanto's been bought out by Bayer Corporation. But it says, once this aspartame is inside the body, it changes chemically into formaldehyde, a substance that is grouped in the same class of poisons as cyanide and arsenic. And when a product containing aspartame is heated to more than 86 degrees, for example, artificial sweetened in hot cocoa, a brain cancer-causing byproduct called diketopiperazine is formed. That's a tongue twister. That's the first time I got through that without having to try it 3 or 4 times. But anyway, it turns chemically into formaldehyde. And they know these things. And yet the FDA says it's okay to put it in your food. I can't see any other reason for it. I don't understand. But anyway, I took this off of a website. It said, artificially sweetened beverages can triple your risk of stroke and dementia or Alzheimer's. Aspartame is the #1 consumed artificial sweetener in America, causing anything from depression to weight gain, and has been linked to brain tumors. In 1985, Monsanto bought the company credited with aspartame's invention, and since then, over 900 published studies have come out revealing the detrimental effects of aspartame. Now, I put this presentation together about 1.5 years ago, so that's just, I've read where there's been thousands of excitotoxins, and I'm sure there's been more done with aspartame. Now, according to the FDA themselves, this is from their own lips, that 80% of all the adverse food reactions are linked to aspartame. All of them that they receive are linked to aspartame. They would have to have some idea that there's a problem with this. Well, These companies understand that too. Just like MSG got a bad name, so they had to make some changes, and so did aspartame.
Your slide shows just the Coca-Cola products, but it's probably other pops also, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Whoever put this together, I don't know why they decided to use Coca-Cola, but they all do, yes. And so what they have done, because aspartame has such a bad name, I'm going to just cover one name change that they made. It's neotame. Has anybody heard of neotame? You have. It's fairly new, but they're making a transition because, again, aspartame has got such a bad name, they don't want to be connected to it. But they're going to find some way to get you to drink their product. A little something about neotame. In a 1998 letter to the FDA, H.J. Roberts, a medical doctor, author of Aspartame Disease, an ignored epidemic, called neotame a synthetic variation of aspartame, but it's about 40 times more potent, and said in his, he said this in his professional opinion. I don't know where he got his research from, but he said that it's potentially 40 times more potent than aspartame. That's, to me, is mind-boggling. And the FDA itself says that it's 7,000 to 13,000 times sweeter than sugar. You hit those taste buds, it's going to be an overload, an overload. Now, all of what I'm sharing with you on neotame, I took from a website. This is some of what I did not get from Dr. Russell Blaylock, was from Harding Medical Institute. And neotame also contains methanol. Now, methanol is methyl alcohol and wood alcohol. It says that this substance is converted to formaldehyde and formic acid, which have a toxic effect on the thymus gland. Again, if we start messing with the thymus gland, it affects the whole body, the function of the whole body. It says that neotame is comprised of 3-dimethylbutyl as well, a neurotoxin that has been listed on the EPA's list of most hazardous chemicals. It causes cells to die at a fast pace. So we see that neotame is not going to be better than aspartame. It's actually worse. And you know what else? They don't even have to put that on the label if they use it. You don't even know if it's there. They're not even required to label it.
Not required to put it
No.
on there.
Mm-mm.
For neotame?
No, they're not. And so when you think about it, brothers and sisters, it just, these things might overwhelm you. But again, we remember we have an enemy.
Yeah.
And I won't say, yes?
We have a friend back in Alabama whose wife used to use cough drops all the time, and she developed a brain tumor and died, and it was connected to this aspartame.
Yes, that's right. And so, this is the world we live in. I was looking to buy a tiller. This is 4 weeks ago, somewhere in there. And I was talking to the owner of this hardware store, and I was looking at this tiller, and I was reading what it said on the, there was above the engine, I think it was, or someplace on the tiller. It says, you do not need to change the oil. I looked at that, and I looked at him, I said, what? And he said, don't believe it. I said, well, it's printed right on here. And this is what he told me. He said he talked to a rep of this company. I'm trying to keep as many, I don't want him to be exposed. But he said the reps from this company, he meets with them because he buys a lot of their products. You know this big box store, Home Depot, I'll reveal their name. They said, we will sell your tiller if you put this on there. And he said, well, why? It's not true. And he said, because millennials don't want to change oil. If you want me to sell your product, you put that on there. Yep, and so they did it. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, this is the world we're living in. You can't even trust what they're putting on equipment. You can't even trust what they're putting in our food. When you start studying this, you can almost get overwhelmed. But we have answers for that too. Because just like the gospel, we need to first understand that we have a need. Because if we don't think we have a need, we'll never search for an answer. And so we have to point people that, yes, we are indeed sinners and we are in need of a Savior. And so if we don't see that we have a need to make changes within our diets to glorify God, then we'll have brain lesions and defects. So now let's look at some of the names that they've changed this MSG to. Now look carefully. I'm going to keep this up for a while. I don't know if you can read this, but look at this list. Now you can go online and find this as well. But you look at some of these things, soy sauce. People use soy sauce. Now this is a big one with certain people. Nutritional yeast flakes. Many people use those. I know.
I really like them.
I know.
A lot.
They're an excitotoxin. There's a reason why. When we used to, before we understood this, we used to put it on our popcorn. Well, we used it in a lot of things, and I just want to take my head and stick it in the bowl and just. And when we quit doing it, popcorn didn't seem to have that passion from me. And so to me, it made sense that, yes, that was it. But these things that are listed here will always contain MFG, manufactured free glutamate. In other words, MSG. They're interchangeable. These will always contain MSG, always. Now, again, they keep changing these because they don't want to be found out.
What a world we live in.
It is. It's sad. And you know what? The thing, FDA's meant there to protect us. And they're allowing all this stuff. And they know these things. Even a toxologist that worked for the FDA, he confessed it. We know. We knew. But
Money talks.
money talks. Now, this is a list of things that often contain MFG. Now, the website I took it from... Go back.
Can you go back?
Okay, sure. The website I took this from, this is just one website. I've gone to other websites and I will find that the ones that say often are included in the always. So I just kept it to be on the safe side, just put it under often rather than saying always. Anyway, this is often. I mean, you look at some of these citric acid, we think, well, that's natural, that should be good. Some of these names are very deceiving. Bouillon broth, carrageenan. You find carrageenan in a lot of the soy milks and different things. Natural flavors, you would think that's really good. No. And then here's a list. Did you get it? Oh, wait. Okay. Now this is a list of, they suspect it. Again, I found these in lists where they do contain it.
Vinegar,
Now,
yes.
where they, I don't know if I mentioned it, but where they process or how they process MSG is through fermentation. Not always, but they do. So fermentation, almost everything that is fermented has MSG. So where can MSG be found? Almost all processed foods contain it because they know the effect it has on the body. They want you to eat their food and they want you to eat more of it. That's just the bottom line. Wax on the produce and fruit. Now that to me, when I found that out, I thought, how bizarre is that? Because most people will turn away from fruits and veggies because they're just blah. And so what they've learned to do is they put wax. You've seen how shiny they are sometimes? They want you to eat that fruit and veggies too. They're taking advantage of MSG. They want you to eat their veggies as well. Medications. You can't get children all the time to take medications, but if you make it sweet enough, I'll eat it. And so they want it to taste good, so the children will take their medications. And vaccines, it was interesting, right when this big vaccination thing was coming out last year, about a year and a half ago or whenever, I found this information. Over 35 different vaccines contain MSG. Now, why would they put MSG in a vaccine? I couldn't find an answer and nobody had an answer. Why would they do that? I don't know.
Kill your brain cells to go into the blood.
Right. I don't want to make things I don't know for sure, but why else? Why else? They know the effects it has on the body. And so when you think of soaps, why would they put them in soaps? Because you absorb soaps through your skin. Again, it's going to go into the body. Cosmetics, shampoos, sunscreens, skin creams, insect repellents, even in dog and cat food. because they know then your dog and cat food is going to eat mine, and it's going to eat more of it. It's sad. So I want to show you, I took a label off of a food. I don't know if you can read that. Now I went through this list and I underlined and made it in bold. This is one can of food. This is what it contains. There are 21 known ingredients that contain MSG in this one label of food right here. 21. Would you eat that? I'd almost guarantee you some of you are. You may not after this. Huh?
What was it off?
Yeah,
Right there. Now, this was taken from Veggie Links, but I want you to know the foods that are processed from Loma Linda and Worthington contain multiple excitotoxins. Remember, they're synergistic. Now, I'm going to take a moment to mention this as well. I did this presentation in Oregon, and I said, I think this would be better to eat than meat. I don't remember. And one man came up to me afterwards. He said, how can you say you'd rather eat that than meat? And I had to stop and think, you know what, that gentleman was right. 21 known excitotoxins in this one food. Now, this Veggie Links, do you know what they use to make this out of? Soy. Did you know that 94% of all soy is genetically modified? And if it's genetically modified, why is it genetically modified? So they don't have to till. They can spray it with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. So you're getting, if you eat this food, it's not only 21 excitotoxins, you're eating genetically modified food, it's been sprayed with chemicals. To me, anyway, I'll leave it with you. Okay. MSG is known to cause migraines, seizures, blurred vision, increased appetite, overeating, infertility, reproductive disorders, impaired brain function, cancer, heart and cardiovascular damage, ADD, ADHD, heart palpitations, tremors, headaches, violence. Also known to increase susceptibility, enhancement of ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Huntington's disease. They're seeing that there is a connection. Remember with the mice, they saw the brain lesions that it was causing? There is a connection to these Alzheimer's, this Parkinson's, and Huntington's diseases. They're seeing a connection with these excitotoxins. So what are some helpful things that we can do to combat MSG? Now remember, when excitotoxins take place, they release all these free radicals, right? So we need antioxidants. These are good sources for antioxidants. Vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, and foods high in antioxidants. Garlic, ginger, turmeric. Do you see that again? The herbs, powerful. The herbs are powerful. Blueberries, strawberries, goji berries, kale, artichoke, raspberries. Now you can go look for yourself too. There are many sources of antioxidants. Yes, Dan. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I heard one person jokingly refer to it. He says, if there's anything in the ingredients that you don't recognize the word, don't buy it.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the ingredients for lettuce, what do you see? Lettuce.
Yeah.
When you see an ingredient list this long with all them chemical names, something's not right. God didn't make our foods that way. So what else can we do? Well, how about move to the country and grow your own foods? How about that? So it's not just excitotoxins that are a problem with our foods. It is the ground that they are grown on even. Even if they're organic or non-GMO, they're often nutrient deficient as well. Because God said you are to fallow or rest your land 1 out of 7 years. People are just, again, about money. They farm it every year. And the land is just being depleted, especially if you're spraying chemicals on it. Because glyphosate kills all the micronutrients that are in the soil, wipes them out. It's a chelator. That's what it's designed to do. And so when you think of the ground, even that many of these organic things are produced on, they're farming them every year. And so it really is best if we would grow our own foods. It takes time and it takes effort, but you know what you're getting is good. But anytime you want to do what's right, it takes effort. And we want to glorify God. So we'll grow our own foods. So When you think next time, when you're looking at labels and you're tempted to eat that, I want you to remember this verse and take this home with you. Mark chapter 15 and verse 23, it says, "And they gave him to drink wine mingled with myrrh, but he received it not." Jesus was upon the cross, and he understood very well that Satan could reach his mind if it was altered. Jesus knew that this would alter his mind. And think of the pain that he was going through. He was going through extreme pain, but he would not do it because he knew it would benumb the senses. And if you do that, that opens the door for Satan to go in. Jesus would not do it. He was willing to suffer the pain rather than lose the opportunity for the salvation of you and I. That's what he went through, a part of what he went through. Because we know even in Gethsemane, the Bible tells us he sweat great drops of blood. Just think of all he went through for us. Would we be willing just to set aside some of these things just for the season, the short time that we're here on earth, for eternity? It makes sense. I'll set it aside. I'll be willing to forego all of these things because I don't want my mind to be infected. I want to spend eternity with my Savior, Jesus Christ. That should be our motive, brothers and sisters. Not that I can be healthy, not that I can stand before you and tell you all that's wrong with the world, but we want to glorify God, and we can do that with our bodies as well. So may God bless you. May God encourage you. May He strengthen you that you would glorify Him.